When viewers watch someone portray Christ on screen, they often see only the beautiful performance. They forget that behind every sacred role lies a hidden battleground where forces of light clash with darkness. Many believers feel this same spiritual warfare in their daily lives, that sense of invisible attacks when they try to grow closer to God. What if someone told them that playing Jesus isn't just acting? What happens when an actor doesn't just perform the role of Christ, but experiences the very spiritual attacks that come with representing the Son of God? The answer reveals a spiritual truth that every Catholic should understand. If you enjoy content that helps you grow spiritually, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our community for more inspiration. Let's get started. Jonathan Roumie never expected what would happen when he stepped into the sandals of Jesus. From the moment filming began on The Chosen, something changed. Not just for him as an actor, but in the invisible realm where angels and demons wage war over souls. "The Lord is my God, who opened the sea before his people," Scripture tells us in Deuteronomy. Just as God opened the Red Sea for Moses, he opens doors for those he calls. During one of his early days on set, Jonathan made a simple prayer. He asked God for a sign, not out of doubt, but from a heart seeking confirmation of this sacred calling. What happened next defied natural explanation. A door behind him suddenly swung open. Then came the sound, a bell tolling with such power that it seemed to shake the very air around him. The entire cathedral seemed to answer his prayer with divine authority. This wasn't coincidence. This was God's way of saying, "My son, you're not just playing a role. You're entering my story." As filming progressed, Jonathan discovered something that many Catholics know in their hearts, but rarely speak about. When someone gets serious about following Christ, the enemy gets serious about attacking them. The secrets of spiritual warfare aren't hidden in complex theological books or reserved for mystics and saints. They're practical, accessible, and desperately needed by every Catholic who wants to grow closer to Christ. That's exactly what The Secret of Jesus Apparitions offers. Not just theories about demonic attack, but real weapons for real battles. If you're tired of feeling defeated by invisible forces, if you've wondered why your spiritual life feels under constant assault, this guide could be the armor you've been seeking. It's available for free in the pinned comment. Grab it now before the edition's gone. Remember what Jesus said in John 15:20, "If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you." This persecution doesn't always come with swords and stones. Sometimes it comes as mysterious physical pain, unexplained anxiety, and spiritual oppression. During crucial scenes, the Last Supper, the arrest, the crucifixion, Jonathan's body began reacting in ways that medical science couldn't explain. Sharp pains would pierce his ears. His heart would race with palpitations that had no medical cause. Waves of anxiety would crash over him like a storm. One day in the makeup chair, preparing for a particularly intense scene, the pain struck again. It was as if something invisible was trying to break his concentration to make him give up. The medical team found nothing wrong, but Jonathan knew better. Every Catholic mother gives her children a rosary. She knows instinctively what theologians take years to understand, that prayer is our armor in spiritual warfare. Jonathan had learned this lesson early. As the attacks intensified, he turned to the weapons our faith has always provided. The rosary became his shield. The chaplet of divine mercy became his sword. Like Mary standing at the foot of the cross, these prayers stood with him through every spiritual assault. During one particularly brutal attack, when pain and anxiety threatened to overwhelm him, his spiritual director was nearby. Together they prayed. 15 minutes of prayer, and the attack lifted completely. No gradual relief, It simply vanished like darkness fleeing from light. This is the power that all believers have access to. The same weapons that protected Jonathan protect us in our daily battles. He wasn't just playing Jesus anymore. He was experiencing something more serious, a participation in the mystery of Christ's suffering. St. Paul wrote in Philippians 3:10, "That I may know him and the power of his resurrection, and may share his sufferings, becoming like him in his death." Jonathan was living this verse. The closer he drew to portraying Christ's passion, the more intense the spiritual warfare became. It wasn't just the exhaustion that comes from a demanding acting schedule. It was spiritual exhaustion, as if his very soul was being drained by forces that didn't want this story told. He often felt an emptiness that physical rest couldn't touch. Like a tree being stripped of its leaves by an invisible storm, something was trying to drain his spiritual vitality. But here's what amazes everyone about Jonathan's response. He never asked, "Why me?" Instead, he embraced these trials as part of his calling. He understood what many of us struggle to accept, that God calls us not despite our sufferings, but through them. Consider this. Jonathan wasn't just an actor playing a part. He was representing Jesus to a generation that desperately needs to see authentic faith. Every scene he filmed would be seen by millions. Every moment of his portrayal would either draw people closer to Christ or push them away. The enemy knows this. Satan trembles when the gospel is proclaimed with power. He rages when Christ's love is displayed authentically. No wonder the attacks were so fierce. Think about your own life. When do people face the most spiritual opposition? Isn't it when they're trying to grow closer to God? When they're attempting to live more faithfully? The same forces that attacked Jonathan attack all of us when we take our faith seriously. This transformation of ordinary space into sacred ground shows that spiritual protection requires intentional action. A free ebook for creating spiritual protection awaits in the pinned comment. Only a few copies remain. Jonathan isn't the first to experience this. Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ, was struck by lightning during filming. Not once, but twice. Heart surgery, separated shoulder, hypothermia. The list of his sufferings reads like a medical report. Coincidence? In the natural realm, perhaps, but in the spiritual realm, these are battle scars, medals of honor from a war that most people never see. Throughout church history, those who've been called to represent Christ, whether on screen, in art or in life, have faced similar trials. It's as if heaven allows these tests to purify the vessel before using it for sacred purposes. But here's the beautiful truth that fills hearts with wonder every time. God never sends us into battle unprotected. Jonathan discovered what Ephesians 6:11 teaches us. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. His armor, prayer, the Mass, the sacraments, the same weapons available to every Catholic. When someone faces their own spiritual battles, and every serious Catholic does, they should remember Jonathan's example. Don't seek comfort first. Don't run from the difficulty. Instead, suit up. Grab your rosary, find your prayer corner, enter the battle knowing that he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. 1 John 4:4. What moves people most about his story isn't the attacks he faced. It's his response to them. Instead of asking for an easier path, he asked for the strength to walk the difficult one. Instead of seeing obstacles, he saw opportunities to draw closer to Christ. This is the heart of a true Christian soldier. In a world obsessed with comfort and ease, Jonathan chose to embrace the cross. He understood that to truly follow Christ, one must be willing to suffer with him. Each pain became a prayer. Each attack became an opportunity for grace. Each trial became a step closer to understanding the depth of Christ's love. Then something extraordinary began to happen. The Chosen wasn't just becoming another religious production. There was an anointing on it, a spiritual power that viewers could feel. People weren't just watching a show. They were encountering Jesus. Lives were being transformed. Hearts were being healed. Vocations were being born. This is what happens when someone willingly enters the spiritual battle for the sake of the gospel. The enemy attacks fiercely because he knows the potential impact. But when we stand firm, when we use the weapons of our faith, when we embrace our crosses, miracles happen. What Jonathan experienced reminds us of something very important. Spiritual warfare in our time looks different than it did in the early church, but it's just as real. The martyrs of old-faced physical persecution, modern believers often face more subtle attacks. During the filming of The Silence, director Martin Scorsese struggled for decades to bring this story of hidden Christians in Japan to the screen. Andrew Garfield, who played a Jesuit priest, spent months in spiritual preparation and emerged profoundly changed. "I fell in love with Jesus Christ," he said. The film itself dealt with spiritual attacks so intense that one crew member died during production. Similarly, when filming The Exorcist, strange incidents occurred on set. Unexplained fires, accidents, and mechanical failures plagued the production. Cast members reported feeling a palpable sense of evil during certain scenes. Yet the film's impact led countless people to examine their faith more seriously. These aren't mere coincidences. They're reminders that spiritual warfare intensifies when heaven's message threatens hell's domain. Like the disciples who witnessed Christ's signs, certain spiritual insights deserve to be shared carefully. That's why this limited ebook is only available for free to our most dedicated viewers. Check the pinned comment while copies are still available. Jonathan's experience speaks to something every Catholic knows. We're all called to represent Christ in our daily lives. Whether it's at work, in our families, or in our communities, each of us carries the responsibility of showing Christ to the world. And just like Jonathan, we face opposition. Maybe it's not mysterious physical pain, but it might be ridicule from co-workers when we mention going to Mass. Perhaps it's not heart palpitations, but anxiety when we try to pray. The enemy adapts his tactics, but his goal remains the same: to stop us from reflecting Christ's light. The beauty of Jonathan's story lies not in his extraordinary calling, but in his ordinary response: prayer, the sacraments, and trust in God. These are available to all of us. Something remarkable began happening as The Chosen reached audiences worldwide. Unlike typical religious entertainment, this series sparked genuine conversions. People weren't just entertained, they were transformed. Families gathered to watch together, creating sacred moments in living rooms across the globe. Non-believers found themselves curious about faith. Lapsed Catholics returned to the church. Children asked their parents about Jesus with new interest and wonder. The series broke traditional barriers. Muslims in the Middle East watched it secretly. Atheists found themselves moved to tears. Protestant denominations that rarely agreed on anything united in recommending the show to their congregations. This divine fruit didn't happen by accident. It grew from soil watered by Jonathan's suffering and protected by countless prayers from the cast and crew. When someone suffers with Christ for the sake of the gospel, the impact ripples through eternity. Churches reported increased attendance after episodes aired. Seminaries saw more young men inquiring about vocations. Online searches for how to pray the rosary skyrocketed after scenes showing Mary alongside Jesus. The enemy had tried to stop this production through spiritual attacks, but God used even these assaults to purify the work and increase its power. Every time Jonathan felt under attack, he prayed harder. Every prayer strengthened the spiritual foundation of the series. Jonathan's experience echoes throughout Catholic history. St. John of the Cross wrote about the dark night of the soul, periods when God seems absent and prayer feels impossible. Yet these very moments often precede the greatest spiritual breakthroughs. Sainte Thérèse of Lisieux faced intense spiritual dryness and attacks on her faith. Her little way emerged from learning to trust God, even when feelings failed her. Like Jonathan, she discovered that suffering united with Christ becomes a source of grace for others. Saint Padre Pio regularly engaged in visible spiritual warfare. Demons physically attacked him in his cell. Yet his suffering produced incredible fruits. Millions sought his intercession. Countless conversions occurred through his ministry, and his stigmata bore witness to Christ's passion. These saints understood what Jonathan learned. Spiritual warfare isn't something to avoid, but to embrace. When faced with attacks, they reached deeper into prayer, held tighter to the sacraments, and trusted more completely in God's protection. Mother Teresa experienced her own dark night that lasted decades. She felt God's absence acutely, yet continued serving the poorest of the poor. Her faithfulness during this spiritual battlefield canonized her as a saint for our times. Jonathan stands in this company not as a saint yet, but as someone who chose to unite his sufferings with Christ's. His willingness to endure attacks for the sake of bringing Jesus to millions places him among those who've suffered for the gospel. This authenticity reminds us that following Christ requires guides who understand true discipleship. Our free ebook awaits serious seekers. In the first comment, we're down to the final few downloads. With each season, with each episode, the spiritual warfare intensified. But so did his reliance on God. So did his understanding of what it truly means to carry the cross. As others write this, he continues to portray Jesus. He continues to face attacks. And he continues to stand firm, protected by prayer and sustained by the grace of God. His example calls all believers to examine their own response to spiritual warfare. When the enemy attacks, and he will, do we run? Do we give up? Or do we put on our spiritual armor and stand firm? Jonathan Roumie's journey reveals a timeless truth. When one chooses to follow Christ seriously, spiritual warfare intensifies. But believers are not alone in this fight. The same God who protected him protects all who call upon his name. Every Catholic faces this spiritual warfare. The attacks may look different, doubt instead of pain, discouragement instead of anxiety. But the battle is real. Like Jonathan, we have access to heaven's arsenal, the rosary, the Mass, confession, and prayer. His story reminds us that authentic faith isn't comfortable. It's costly. But when we're willing to fight with heaven's weapons, miracles happen. Lives are transformed. If these insights resonate with you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your super thanks support helps us create more content like this. Join our community and stay connected. The next time darkness presses in, remember the actor who chose to suffer with Christ. Remember that in him we're more than conquerors. The war rages on, but the victory is already won. The chosen indeed. Not just Jonathan, but all of us who choose to follow Christ despite the cost.